Josh Cole stood in the grocery store checkout line, hands trembling as he stared at the glossy magazine cover. The young man's face, those familiar eyes that somehow reflected his own, made his heart pound against his ribs. 17 years had passed since that winter morning at Boston Memorial Hospital, when he'd made the decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "Sir, would you like to purchase that?" The cashier's voice sounded distant. Josh nodded weakly, adding the magazine to his small pile of groceries. As he fumbled for his wallet, the room began to spin. The fluorescent lights overhead blurred into streaks of white. The last thing he remembered was the cold tile floor rushing up to meet him. "Mr. Cole, can you hear me?" Josh blinked, finding himself on a small cot in what appeared to be the store's break room. A concerned employee stood over him, offering a paper cup of water. "You fainted," the employee explained. "Do you need us to call someone?" "No," Josh muttered, his eyes darting to the magazine that had fallen nearby. "I'm fine." But he wasn't fine. For nearly 2 decades he had buried the memory of that day. The day he'd walked away from his newborn son, simply because the baby's skin was several shades darker than his own. The day that exposed the ugliest part of himself, a part he'd spent years trying to forget. The magazine cover featured Kevin Larson, the 17-year-old basketball prodigy who had just signed with a major university. The same Kevin who had Josh's mother's eyes. The same Kevin who, according to the headline, had overcome tremendous odds after being abandoned at birth. Josh's phone buzzed with a text from his current wife, Kay. "Where are you? Dinner's getting cold." How could he explain what had just happened? How could he tell Kay about the son she didn't know existed? About the terrible choice he'd made when he was young, scared and poisoned by his own father's prejudice? Back in his car, Josh sat motionless, staring at the magazine. He flipped to the feature article, his eyes scanning frantically for details. Kevin had been raised by a single mother, Brenda Larson, in Cambridge, just 30 minutes from Josh's suburban home. The article praised her strength and determination in raising a son who was now being recruited by professional scouts before he'd even started college. "What have I done?" Josh whispered to the empty car. That night, after a quiet dinner, with Kay and their 10-year-old daughter Susie, Josh locked himself in his home office. He pulled up social media accounts, searching for more information about Kevin. There he was, smiling in team photos, holding acceptance letters, posting about celebrations. In one photo, Kevin stood with his arm around a woman who must be Brenda. She looked tired but proud, her smile exactly as Josh remembered it from their brief relationship during his final year of college. Josh had met Brenda when she transferred to his university. Their relationship had been intense but short-lived. When she told him she was pregnant, he had panicked. His father, a stern man with outdated views, had made it clear he would cut Josh off financially if he mixed bloodlines. Young, weak, and terrified of losing his inheritance and family status, Josh had decided to end the relationship. He had promised to support the child financially, but insisted on keeping his name off the birth certificate. And then, when the baby was born and clearly reflected Brenda's heritage more than his own, Josh had seized on that excuse to walk away completely. He had convinced himself the child must not be his, that he had been deceived, that his responsibilities were nullified. Now, staring at the magazine photos, Josh could see it was a lie he'd told himself. The resemblance was subtle but unmistakable. The shape of the eyes, the curve of the smile, the thoughtful expression when interviewed. This was his son. Josh's computer screen illuminated a web page. Boston Community College's upcoming charity basketball game, where Kevin would make a special appearance before heading off to university. It was happening this weekend, just a few miles away. Before he could second-guess himself, Josh purchased a ticket. What would he say if he managed to get close enough to speak with Kevin? Would he reveal who he was? Would he apologize? Or would he simply observe from a distance, a stranger among hundreds of fans? Josh's phone rang, startling him. It was his father. "Have you seen it?" his father asked without preamble, his voice tight. "Seen what?" Josh replied, though he already knew. "Don't play dumb. That Larson boy is all over the sports news. The timing, the age. People might start asking questions. People might make connections." Josh's grip tightened on the phone. "And what if they do?" "You know what's at stake," his father said coldly. "The family name, the business, your inheritance, your daughter's future." As if on cue, Susie knocked on the office door. "Dad, can you help me with my math homework?" "Just a minute, sweetheart," Josh called out, his voice strained. "Fix this, Josh," his father demanded before hanging up. Josh sat in silence, the weight of his past choices crushing down on him. What his father really meant was clear. Make sure this boy, this unwelcome reminder of a youthful mistake, disappeared from their lives again. But as Josh looked at Kevin's face on the magazine once more, a different thought formed in his mind. Maybe it wasn't too late to fix his greatest mistake, but not in the way his father intended. Maybe it was time to find the courage he had lacked 17 years ago. The question was, would Kevin or Brenda even want to hear from him? And what would happen to everything Josh had built when the truth came out? Outside his office door, Susie called again. "Dad, are you okay?" He wasn't, but maybe, just maybe, he could be. The Boston Community College gymnasium buzzed with excitement. Josh sat in the middle of the bleachers, anonymous among hundreds of cheering fans. He tugged his baseball cap lower, though he doubted anyone would recognize him here. His father's concerns about connections being made seemed far-fetched in this crowd. On the court, Kevin Larson moved with effortless grace. At 6'3", he commanded attention without even trying, his precise movements reflecting years of discipline and natural talent. Josh watched, transfixed, as his son, the word still felt foreign in his mind, executed a perfect three-pointer. "That kid's going places," commented the man sitting next to Josh. "Got a full ride to Duke. NBA scouts already watching him." Josh nodded, not trusting his voice. Pride welled up inside him, pride he had no right to feel. What had he contributed to this young man's success? Nothing but absence. After the exhibition game, a small crowd gathered for autographs. Josh hung back, watching as Kevin smiled and chatted with fans. Up close, the resemblance was even more striking. The way Kevin tilted his head when listening intently, that was Kay's sister's mannerism. The laugh that suddenly burst forth when a young fan said something amusing, that was Josh's mother's laugh. As the crowd thinned, Josh found himself moving forward, as if pulled by an invisible force. Suddenly, he was standing before Kevin, magazine in hand. "Would you mind signing this?" Josh asked, his voice steadier than he expected. "Sure thing," Kevin replied cheerfully. "Who should I make it out to?" Josh hesitated. Josh Cole. If the name meant anything, to Kevin, he didn't show it. The young man scribbled his signature across the magazine cover, adding a brief, "Follow your dreams" beneath it. "Thanks for coming out today," Kevin said, already looking past Josh to the next fan. Josh should have walked away then, should have been satisfied with this brief encounter. Instead, he heard himself ask, "How's your mother?" Kevin's bright expression faltered. "My mom? Do you know her?" Before Josh could respond, a woman's voice cut through the awkward moment. "Kevin, we need to go. Your coach is waiting." Josh turned and found himself face to face with Brenda Larson. 17 years had added subtle lines around her eyes and silver threads in her dark hair, but her gaze was as piercing as ever. Recognition flashed across her face, followed quickly by shock, and then something harder to define. "Josh," she whispered, quiet enough that Kevin couldn't hear. "I'll catch up with you, Mom," Kevin called, already moving toward his coach. Brenda nodded absently, her eyes never leaving Josh's face. When Kevin was out of earshot, she asked in a controlled voice, "What are you doing here?" "I saw the magazine," Josh replied simply. I needed to see him. After 17 years? Now that he's successful and in the spotlight?" Her words were sharp, but her voice remained low. "You had your chance, Josh. You made your choice." "I know," Josh admitted. "I know I have no right to be here, to disrupt your lives." Brenda's expression softened fractionally. "Then why are you?" "I passed out when I saw his face on that magazine right there in the grocery store," Josh said, giving a humorless laugh. "Hit my head on the checkout counter. It felt like, I don't know, like the universe was telling me something." "The universe didn't tell you to come here," Brenda replied. "You did that on your own." Josh nodded. "You're right. I did." A tense silence stretched between them. "He doesn't know about you," Brenda finally said. "I never told him his father's name, just that you weren't ready to be a parent." "That's generous," Josh murmured. "More than I deserved." "It wasn't for you," Brenda clarified. "It was for him. I didn't want him carrying the weight of being rejected because of his skin color." The truth of her words stung, but Josh couldn't deny them. "You've done an amazing job with him, Brenda. He seems like an incredible young man." "He is," she agreed, a hint of pride breaking through her guarded expression. "But he's also at a critical point in his life. Basketball scholarship. Media attention. New pressures. The last thing he needs is," she gestured vaguely toward Josh. "Emotional upheaval," Josh finished for her. "I understand." Across the gym, Kevin glanced curiously in their direction. "Does he know we're talking about him?" Josh asked. "He knows something's up," Brenda replied. "He's perceptive. Gets that from my side," she added. Pointedly. Josh deserved that jab. "I'm not asking to be part of his life," he said quickly. I've been living with this mistake for 17 years, pretending it didn't happen, pretending he didn't exist. I can't do that anymore." Brenda's gaze was appraising. "What exactly are you hoping for here, Josh?" It was a fair question, one Josh had been asking himself since seeing that magazine. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe just a chance to apologize, to tell him that what I did had nothing to do with him and everything to do with my own weakness." "And then what?" Brenda pressed. "You go back to your life, conscience clear, while he processes that information, while he wonders why he wasn't enough for you to overcome your weakness." Her words hit like a physical blow. Josh hadn't considered that perspective. "I have a family," Josh said quietly. "A wife, a daughter. They don't know about Kevin." Brenda's expression hardened again. "So, you're still hiding, still ashamed." "It's not that simple," Josh protested, though part of him knew she was right. "Mom." Kevin had appeared beside them, his gym bag slung over one shoulder. His curious gaze bounced between Josh and Brenda. "Everything okay?" "Everything's fine, honey," Brenda assured him with a smile that almost looked genuine. "This is just an old friend from college." "Josh Cole," Kevin said, recognition lighting his eyes. "The name sounded familiar when you said it. Mom has some old photos with that name written on the back." Josh's heart skipped a beat. She had kept photos of them. "We should get going," Brenda said firmly. "It was unexpected seeing you, Josh." "Wait," Josh said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a business card and held it out to Brenda. "My number. If either of you ever need anything." Brenda looked at the card without taking it. For a moment, Josh thought she would reject it outright. Then, to his surprise, Kevin reached out and took it. "Thanks for coming to the game, Mr. Cole," the young man said politely. As Josh watched them walk away, his phone buzzed with a text from his father. "Did you take care of it?" Josh stared at the message, anger bubbling up inside him. "Take care of it." like Kevin was a problem to be solved rather than a person, rather than his son. Driving home, Josh rehearsed explanations for his absence. He'd tell Kay he ran into an old college friend. That wasn't exactly a lie. But even as he practiced the half-truth, he knew something fundamental had shifted. The careful walls he'd built around his past were crumbling. When he pulled into his driveway, Josh noticed a dark sedan parked across the street. As he watched, the window rolled down briefly, revealing his father's driver. A chill ran down Josh's spine. Had he been followed? His phone rang. It was Kay. "Josh." Her voice was tight with worry. "Your father is here. He says there's something important we need to discuss. Something about a son." "Josh, what is he talking about?" Josh's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. His father had always been controlling, but this crossed a line, barging into his home, preparing to reveal his most carefully guarded secret before he could explain it himself. It was unforgivable. He rushed through the front door to find Kay, standing in the living room, arms crossed, face pale. His father, Steiny Cole, sat in Josh's favorite armchair like a king on a throne. Susie was nowhere to be seen, thankfully. "Where's Susie?" Josh asked, his voice strained. "I sent her to Jenna's for a sleepover," Kay replied, her eyes never leaving his face. "Your father said we needed to discuss something private." Steiny cleared his throat. "I was just explaining to Kay about a potential situation that might affect the family." "This isn't your story to tell," Josh snapped. "Apparently, it isn't one you're willing to tell either," Steiny retorted. Kay's gaze darted between them. "Will someone please tell me what's going on?" Josh took a deep breath. This wasn't how he'd wanted this conversation to happen, but he wouldn't let his father control the narrative. "I have a son," he said quietly. "From before we met." Kay blinked, processing this information. "A son? How? How old?" 17, Josh answered, watching understanding dawn on her face. 17, she repeated. "And you never told me. In all our years together, you never thought to mention you had a child." "I didn't just keep this from you," Josh admitted. "I kept it from myself. I walked away when he was born. I convinced myself he wasn't my responsibility." "Not your responsibility?" Kay's voice rose slightly. "He's your child." Steiny stood, straightening his expensive suit. "The situation was complicated, Kay. The mother was, well, they weren't compatible. The child didn't resemble Josh. There were questions of paternity." Josh's jaw clenched. "That's not true, and you know it. I used that as an excuse because I was a coward, because I didn't want to stand up to you." He turned to Kay. "His name is Kevin Larson. He's a basketball star, about to go to college on a full scholarship. His mother, Brenda, raised him on her own because I walked away." "Because the boy is black," Steiny added coldly. "Let's not dance around it. The Cole name means something in this community. We have a legacy." "A legacy of what?" Josh interrupted. "Prejudice, fear, abandoning our own children if they don't fit your narrow view of what's acceptable." Sank onto the couch. "I need a minute to process this. You have a 17-year-old son. A son you abandoned because of his race. Josh, I don't even recognize you right now." "I didn't recognize myself either," Josh admitted. "Not for years. I buried it so deep I could almost pretend it never happened. Until now," Steiny said. "Until the boy started, appearing in magazines and news reports until he became impossible to ignore." "Tell her what you did today, Josh." Kay looked up. "What did you do?" Josh hesitated, then confessed. "I went to see him at a charity basketball game. I just wanted to see him in person, to know who he is." "Did you speak to him?" Kay asked. "Briefly. He doesn't know who I am, but I spoke with his mother." Steiny made a dismissive sound. "This is exactly what I warned you about. This boy appears. and immediately you're drawn back into their world, putting everything we've built at risk." "Their world?" Josh echoed incredulously. "He's my son, my flesh and blood, just like Susie." The mention of their daughter seemed to refocus Kay. "Does Susie know she has a half-brother?" "No one knew," Josh said. "I made sure of that. I paid Brenda a settlement when Kevin was born, on the condition that my name stay off the birth certificate. I thought I could buy my way out of responsibility." Kay's expression reflected disgust, though Josh couldn't tell if it was directed at him or the situation. "And now? What's changed now?" "I saw his face," Josh said simply. "I looked into eyes that could be my mother's, saw a smile that could be mine, and I couldn't lie to myself anymore." Steiny checked his watch ostentatiously. "This sentimentality is exactly what I was afraid of. The boy has obviously done fine without you. Better than fine. There's no need to disrupt his life or yours by inserting yourself now." "That's not your decision," Josh said firmly. "It's not entirely yours either," Kay pointed out, her voice steadier now. "You have responsibilities here, too. A wife who just discovered her husband has been lying by omission for our entire marriage. A daughter who doesn't know her father abandoned his first child." The weight of her words hit Josh hard. "You're right," he acknowledged. "I've handled this all wrong from the beginning." Steiny moved toward the door. "Think carefully about your next steps, Josh. There's more at stake than your sudden attack of conscience, the company, your inheritance, Susie's future." "Are you threatening to disown me?" Josh asked, a bitter laugh escaping him. "History repeating itself." "I'm reminding you of your obligations," Steiny replied coldly. After Steiny left, the silence between Josh and Kay stretched painfully. "He has your father's toxic views," Kay finally said, "but you're the one who chose to listen to them, to act on them." "I know," Josh said. "I was young, scared and weak, but that's not an excuse." Kay stood and paced the living room. "So what happens now? You've seen him. You've opened this door. What's your plan?" "I don't have one," Josh admitted. "I just know I can't." "Pretend anymore." Kay stopped pacing and faced him directly. "If you had seen that magazine and that boy didn't look like you, if he had been white, would you have still recognized him as your son? Would you have still felt this awakening?" The question struck Josh like a physical blow. Would he? Or was his recognition of Kevin based solely on seeing his own features reflected back at him? "I want to think I would have," he said slowly. "But honestly, I don't know," Kay nodded, as if his answer confirmed something for her. "I need time to think. This changes everything I thought I knew about you." "I understand," Josh said, though the prospect of Kay pulling away terrified him. "And Susie needs to know," Kay added. "She deserves the truth." "Yes," Josh agreed, "but how do we tell her?" "We'll figure it out," Kay said, her tone suggesting she wasn't sure they would figure anything out together anymore. That night, Josh slept in the guest room. Around midnight, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Brenda. We need to talk." Something's happened with Kevin. Josh's heart raced as he texted back, "What's wrong?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, the reply came. Someone contacted him, told him everything. He knows who you are, and he's furious, not just with you. Josh stared at the message in horror. Who would have? His father. It had to be. But why would Steiny do that after spending years ensuring Kevin remained disconnected from their family? Another text came through. "He left the house 2 hours ago. Won't answer his phone. I'm worried, Josh." Josh texted back immediately. "I'll help look for him. This is my fault." As he pulled on clothes and grabbed his car keys, another text arrived. "Check the community college gym. He goes there when he's upset." Josh headed for the door, only to find Kay standing in the hallway in her bathrobe. "Where are you going at this hour?" she asked. "It's Kevin," Josh explained, the words tumbling out. "Someone told him I'm his father. He's missing." Kay's expression shifted from hurt to concern. "Do you want me to come? With you?" The offer surprised him. "You would do that?" "I'm angry with you, Josh. Disappointed. But I'm not heartless. He's just a kid who's had his world turned upside down." As they drove toward the college in tense silence, Josh's phone rang. It was Brenda again. "I just got a call," she said, her voice tight with worry. "Kevin's been in an accident." The emergency room buzzed with activity, but Josh barely noticed. His focus narrowed to the double doors through which Kevin had been wheeled 15 minutes earlier. Beside him, Kay sat quietly, her presence both a comfort and a reminder of how dramatically his life had changed in just 48 hours. Across the waiting room, Brenda paced, her phone pressed to her ear as she updated someone, a family member, Josh guessed, about Kevin's condition. What little they knew anyway. Car accident, possible concussion, broken arm. The words tumbled through Josh's mind on repeat. Family of Kevin Larson? A doctor emerged from the treatment area, clipboard in hand. Brenda rushed forward. "I'm his mother." The doctor nodded. "He's stable. X-rays confirmed a fracture in his left radius, his forearm, but it's a clean break. We've set it and put on a cast. The concussion is mild, but we'd like to keep him overnight for observation." "His arm," Brenda said, her voice breaking slightly. "Will this affect his basketball?" The doctor offered a reassuring smile. "The fracture should heal completely with proper care. He'll need to wear the cast for about 6 weeks, followed by physical therapy, but there's no reason he shouldn't regain full function." The relief on Brenda's face was palpable. Josh felt it too, an unexpected wave of gratitude that Kevin's future wouldn't be derailed by what had happened tonight. "Can I see him?" Brenda asked. "He's asking for you," the doctor confirmed. "Just one visitor for now, though." Brenda glanced back at Josh, her expression unreadable, before following the doctor through the double doors. Left alone with Kay, Josh sank into a chair, the adrenaline that had carried him here finally draining away. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. Kay nodded. "How did this happen? The accident?" "I don't know yet," Josh replied. "Brenda just said he was driving too fast and took a curve wrong." Josh ran a hand through his hair. "If I hadn't gone to that game, if I'd just left things alone." "You can't think that way," Kay replied, her tone softer than it had been at home. "You didn't cause this accident, and from what little I know about teenage boys, if he was upset enough to drive recklessly, those feelings were already there. You didn't create them. You just gave them a focus." It was a surprisingly generous perspective given the circumstances. Josh studied his wife's profile, wondering what thoughts were swirling behind her composed exterior. "What my father did, contacting Kevin behind my back, I had nothing to do with that," Josh clarified. "I would never have wanted Kevin to find out that way." "I believe you," Kay said. "Your father's actions didn't surprise me. He's always been ruthlessly pragmatic." Josh frowned. "But I don't understand his strategy here. If he wanted to keep Kevin away from our family, why tell him the truth? Why not just pressure me to back off?" Kay considered this. "Maybe he thought if Kevin rejected you first, you'd give up. Or maybe he's just creating chaos because he can't control you anymore." Before Josh could respond, Brenda emerged from the treatment area. Her eyes were red-rimmed but dry. "He's asking for you," she said to Josh, the words clearly difficult for her to deliver. Josh stood, surprised. "He wants to see me?" "Not exactly," Brenda clarified. "He wants answers, and I think you owe him those at least." Josh nodded. "Of course." As he moved toward the double doors, Kay reached for his hand and squeezed it briefly. The simple gesture of support meant more than he could express. The hospital room was dim, illuminated only by a small light above the bed. Kevin lay with his freshly casted left arm propped on a pillow. A butterfly bandage stretched across his right eyebrow, and a darkening bruise colored his cheekbone. Despite these injuries, his gaze was clear and direct as Josh entered. "Mr. Cole," Kevin said, his voice carefully neutral. "Or should I call you Dad?" The word, spoken with such irony, cut deep. "You can call me whatever you want," Josh replied. Kevin studied him, looking for resemblances perhaps, or trying to reconcile the stranger before him with the father who had rejected him. "Why did you come to my game?" It wasn't the first question Josh had expected. "I saw your picture." "In a magazine," Josh said. "I recognized something in your face, something familiar, but not familiar enough 17 years ago." Kevin's tone remained controlled, but the hurt beneath was evident. Josh took a step closer to the bed. "I owe you an explanation, though no explanation can justify what I did." "Try anyway," Kevin challenged. So Josh did. He told Kevin about meeting Brenda in college, about his father's threats to cut him off, about his own weakness and fear. He explained how he had convinced himself the baby wasn't his, using the difference in skin tone as an excuse even though he knew better. "My grandfather is the one who called me," Kevin said when Josh finished. "He told me he wanted to clear the air, said I should know that my father had rejected me because of my race and that nothing had changed, that you only came to the game because you were worried about your reputation now that I'm in the public." Josh's hands curled into fists. "That's not true. My father doesn't speak for me, especially not now." "Then why did you come?" Kevin pressed. "After all these years, why now?" "Because seeing your face forced me to confront what I'd done," Josh admitted. "I couldn't hide from it anymore. Couldn't pretend it hadn't happened." "So, this is about your guilt, your conscience." Kevin's voice finally cracked with emotion. "What about me? Did you ever think about me?" "Every day," Josh said quietly. "Even when I was trying not to." Kevin turned his face away, blinking rapidly. "I grew up thinking my father didn't want me, that I wasn't good enough. Mom never said it was because of my skin, but I figured it out anyway. Do you know what that does to a kid?" Josh's throat tightened. "I can't imagine. And I'm so sorry, Kevin. More sorry than I can express." "Sorry doesn't fix anything," Kevin said. "You're right," Josh acknowledged. "Nothing I can say will undo the damage I've caused. But if there's anything I can do now that I'm successful, now that I'm worth acknowledging." Kevin's bitter laugh dissolved into a grimace of pain. Josh wanted to deny it, to claim his interest wasn't contingent on Kevin's success, but wasn't that exactly what his father had accused him of? And could he honestly say it wasn't at least partially true? "I don't expect you to forgive me," Josh said finally. "You have every right to your anger, but please don't punish yourself for it. Don't drive your car into a ditch because of what I did 17 years ago." Kevin's gaze snapped back to him. "Is that what you think happened? That I crashed because I was upset about you?" "Weren't you?" Josh asked, confused. "I was upset, yeah," Kevin admitted. "But the accident happened because another driver ran a stop sign and clipped my rear bumper. My reaction time was off because I was distracted, but I didn't drive recklessly on purpose." Relief washed through Josh. "I'm glad to hear that. Your mother was worried you might have tried to hurt yourself." Kevin shook his head. "I've got too much going for me to throw it away over someone who never cared enough to stick around." The words stung, but Josh couldn't argue. "You're right. And I'm genuinely proud of everything you've accomplished, Kevin. Your mother has done an amazing job raising you." Kevin's expression softened slightly. "Yeah, she has." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Time to let our patient rest." Josh nodded and turned to go. "Mr. Cole," Kevin called as Josh reached the door. "The woman who came with you is..." She your wife? Yes, Josh confirmed. Her name is Kay. Does she know about me? She does now, Josh replied. I should have told her years ago. Kevin seemed to be weighing his next words carefully. Are there other siblings? The question caught Josh off guard. A half-sister, Susie. She's 10. Something flickered across Kevin's face. Interest, perhaps, or longing. Does she know about me? Not yet, Josh admitted. But she will. I'm done keeping secrets. As Josh left the room, he found both Brenda and Kay waiting in the hallway. The two women had apparently been talking in his absence, and the thought of what they might have discussed made him uneasy. How did it go? Brenda asked. About as well as could be expected, Josh replied. He's angry, hurt. He has every right to be. Kay touched his arm. The doctor says he'll be released tomorrow morning. I've been thinking. She hesitated, then continued with determination. Maybe Kevin and Brenda could come to dinner at our house when he's feeling better. The invitation stunned Josh. Are you sure? No, Kay admitted. But doing the right thing isn't about being sure. It's about trying, even when it's difficult. She turned to Brenda. You raised an extraordinary young man on your own. I'd like to know him, and I think Susie should know her brother. Brenda studied Kay's face, looking for ulterior motives perhaps, but finding none. I'll discuss it with Kevin, she said finally. It's his decision. As they prepared to leave, Josh's phone buzzed with a text from his father. Call me immediately. We need to contain this situation. Josh showed the message to Kay, who shook her head in disgust. Your father contacted a 17-year-old boy to deliberately hurt him, she said. I think it's time to decide where your loyalties lie. Josh took one last look through the hospital room window at his son before making the easiest, difficult decision of his life. The Cole family dining room had never felt so tense. Josh adjusted the place settings for the 5th time, moving forks and repositioning water glasses with nervous precision. Susie watched from the doorway, curiosity evident in her expression. Dad, you're being weird, she said, twirling a strand of her hair. It's just dinner. Not just dinner. Josh had tried to explain the situation to Susie the previous evening, sitting beside Kay on their daughter's bed. They'd used simple terms. A child from before Daddy met Mommy. A mistake Daddy made by not being there for him. A chance now to make things right. Susie had absorbed the information with surprising calmness, asking practical questions. Would Kevin live with them sometimes? Did this mean she had to share her birthday presents? Would he play basketball with her? The doorbell rang, sending Josh's heart into his throat. I'll get it, Susie called, darting toward the front door before Josh could stop her. He followed, reaching the entryway just as Susie pulled the door open. Brenda stood on the porch, a cake box in her hands. Beside her, Kevin loomed tall and slightly awkward, his left arm still in its cast. Hello, Susie said, looking up at Kevin with undisguised interest. I'm Susie. Are you really my brother? Josh winced at his daughter's directness, but Kevin's face softened. Half-brother, he corrected gently. But yeah, I guess I am. Susie nodded, satisfied with this answer. Cool. Dad says you're really good at basketball. Can you teach me how to dribble between my legs? Dad can't do it. The simple childish request broke the tension. Kevin's mouth quirked upward. Maybe when my arm heals, he promised. Kay appeared, welcoming Brenda and Kevin with a warmth that seemed to surprise them both. Josh stood back, allowing his wife to guide their guests into the dining room, where she had prepared a carefully considered meal. As they settled around the table, Josh observed the contrasts. Kevin's cautious politeness, Brenda's watchful protection, Kay's determined hospitality, and Susie's innocent curiosity. They made an unlikely gathering, connected by bonds, both biological and newly forged. Before we eat, Josh said, finding his voice at last, I want to thank you both for coming. I know this isn't easy. He met Kevin's gaze. especially for you. But it means everything that you're willing to try. Kevin nodded, his expression guarded, but not hostile. Progress, Josh thought. Small but significant. The conversation during dinner remained mostly superficial. Kevin's basketball achievements, Susie's science project, safe topics that allowed them to interact without touching on painful subjects. Only once did the past intrude when Susie innocently asked, "Why haven't we met Kevin before?" A brief silence fell over the table. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes," Kay answered carefully. "Big mistakes that hurt people. But what matters is recognizing those mistakes and trying to make things right." Her words were clearly meant for Kevin as much as for Susie. The young man studied Kay with newfound respect. After dessert, the chocolate cake Brenda had brought, Susie convinced Kevin to show her some basic basketball handling techniques in the driveway, despite his cast. Through the window, Josh watched as his son demonstrated a simple crossover dribble. Susie's face furrowed in concentration as she tried to mimic his movements. "She likes him," Brenda observed, coming to stand beside Josh. "She does," Josh agreed. "Kids are resilient that way. No preconceptions, no judgment." "Unlike the rest of us," Brenda said, but there was no bitterness in her tone. Kay joined them at the window, a glass of wine in her hand. "He's good with her." "He helped coach a youth league last summer," Brenda explained. "He's always had a way with younger kids." They watched in companionable silence as Kevin high-fived Susie for a successful dribble sequence, his injured arm held carefully at his side. "Have you spoken with your father?" Brenda asked quietly. Josh shook his head. "Not since the hospital. I've returned his calls with a single text. Stay away from my family. All of my family," he added meaningfully. "He won't accept that easily," Brenda warned. "No," Josh acknowledged. "He won't." As if summoned by their conversation, headlights swept across the driveway as a black sedan pulled up to the curb. Susie and Kevin paused their impromptu basketball lesson, turning toward the unexpected visitor. Steiny Cole emerged from the car, straightening his coat as he surveyed the scene before him. His grandson and granddaughter together in the driveway, his son and the two women watching from the window. His expression revealed nothing. Josh moved quickly to the front door, stepping outside to intercept his father before he could approach Kevin. "What are you doing here?" Josh demanded. Steiny's gaze shifted to Kevin, who had placed a protective hand on Susie's shoulder. "I see you've organized a touching family reunion. How quaint." "You weren't invited," Josh said coldly. "And after what you did, calling Kevin, telling him those things, you're not welcome here." "I merely told the boy the truth," Steiny replied. "Something you've avoided doing for 17 years. "No, you tried to poison him against me to maintain your control," Josh countered. "It's what you've always done. Manipulate, threaten, use people's vulnerabilities against them." Steiny's expression hardened. "I've protected this family and our legacy, something you seem determined to dismantle." Kay appeared at Josh's side, with Brenda close behind. The women flanked him like sentinels, their presence bolstering his resolve. "Mr. Cole," Kay said, her voice steady, "this is a private family dinner. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Steiny smiled thinly. "Family dinner? Is that what we're calling this arrangement?" "Yes," Kay replied simply. "Family. Kevin is Josh's son, which makes him Susie's brother and my stepson. Those are facts, not arrangements." Steiny's gaze swept over them dismissively before landing on Kevin, who had guided Susie a few steps back toward the house. "And you, young man, you're content to suddenly play happy families after 17 years, to accept this convenient change of heart?" Kevin stiffened. "I'm here for my mom," he said. "And for Susie. I haven't decided about the rest yet." "Wise," Steiny commented. "At least someone here is thinking clearly." He turned back to Josh. "This little domestic tableau won't last, you know. Reality will set in. Questions will arise. How will you explain this situation to your colleagues, your clients, your country club friends? I don't care what they think, Josh said. I care what my children think, what my wife thinks. Admirable sentiments, Steiny replied, his tone suggesting the opposite. But sentiment doesn't pay the bills or fund college educations or maintain the lifestyle to which you've all become accustomed. Josh understood the implicit threat. If you're threatening to cut me off financially, go ahead. I should have stood on my own 2 feet years ago. Steiny raised an eyebrow. It's not just about money, Josh. It's about connections, opportunities, doors that open or close. Think carefully about the path you're choosing. I already have, Josh replied. Now please leave. For a moment, Steiny seemed ready to argue further. Then his gaze shifted to something behind Josh. Kevin had moved forward, standing tall despite his injured arm. You should go, the young man said quietly. Whatever you're trying to do here isn't working. Steiny studied Kevin with newfound interest. You have your grandmother's forthrightness, he observed unexpectedly. She never minced words either. The comment seemed to catch Kevin off guard. For a fleeting moment, something like curiosity flickered across his face. Steiny noticed it too. Perhaps someday you'd like to hear about her, he said, his tone softening fractionally. She would have admired your athletic achievements. Before anyone could respond to this surprising overture, Steiny turned and walked back to his car. As the sedan pulled away, Josh realized he was trembling, with anger, relief, or some combination of both. Are you okay? Kay asked, touching his arm. I think so, Josh replied, though he wasn't entirely sure. Standing up to his father felt both terrifying and exhilarating. Kevin approached, his expression thoughtful. What was he talking about? My grandmother? My mother, Josh explained. Your grandmother. She died when I was in college, before I met your mom. He hesitated. She would have loved you, Kevin. She had none of my father's views. Do you have pictures of her? Kevin asked, the question betraying a hunger for connection that his guarded demeanor had concealed. Lots, Josh said. I can show you. As they moved back toward the house, Brenda caught Josh's eye. Your father's more clever than I gave him credit for, she murmured, mentioning your mother like that, playing the grandmother card. You think it was manipulation? Josh asked. Maybe, Brenda allowed, or maybe even your father is capable of seeing what he's about to lose. Inside, Susie had already claimed Kevin's attention again, showing him her basketball card collection with animated enthusiasm. The teenager listened with surprising patience, seeming genuinely interested in his half-sister's prized possessions. Is that Duke? He asked, pointing to a card. Susie nodded. That's where you're going, right? Mom said you got a scholarship. That's right, Kevin confirmed, his eyes meeting Josh's across the room. Full ride. But what about your arm? Susie asked, concerned. Dad said you broke it. It'll heal, Kevin assured her. I'll be ready for the season. Can we come watch you play? Susie asked. The simple question hung in the air, loaded with implications. Kevin looked to his mother, then back to Susie. Yeah, he said finally. I'd like that. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a beginning, a doorway left slightly ajar instead of firmly closed. As Josh watched his two children together, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. His phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced down, expecting another threat from his father. Instead, he found a message from an unknown number, an assistant sports editor at the Boston Herald. I understand Kevin Larson is your son. We're running a feature on him next week. Care to comment? Josh stared at his phone, the text message from the Boston Herald editor glowing accusingly. How had they found out? His father? An ambitious reporter connecting dots? It didn't matter. Now, the private reconciliation he'd hoped for was about to become public fodder. What is it? Kay asked, noticing his expression. Josh showed her the message. Her lips thinned as she read it. We should tell them, she said, nodding toward Kevin and Brenda, who were looking through a family photo album with Susie. Josh agreed. This would affect Kevin most of all. Can we talk for a minute? He asked, approaching the trio. Brenda immediately picked up on his tension. What's wrong? Josh handed her his phone. She read the message, her body stiffening. How did they find out? She demanded. I don't know, Josh admitted. But they're running the story either way. The question is whether I comment or not. Kevin took the phone from his mother, his face darkening as he read. So now everyone will know. My teammates, my coaches, everyone at school. I'm sorry, Kevin, Josh said. I never wanted this to become public. But it is, Kevin replied flatly. So what now? Kay stepped in. That depends on what you want, Kevin. This is your life that's about to be dissected in the press. You should have a say in how the story is told. Kevin seemed surprised by her perspective. What are my options? Josh considered. I could decline to comment. They'll still run the story, but it would be one-sided, based on whatever sources they have. Or, Kevin prompted. Or we control the narrative, Josh suggested. I give them a statement, but on our terms. Brenda crossed her arms. And what would that statement say? That you've had a change of heart after 17 years? That you're suddenly embracing fatherhood when it's convenient? The harshness of her words stung, but Josh recognized the protective instinct behind them. It would say whatever we, all of us, decide it should say. The truth, but only as much of it as we're comfortable sharing. The whole truth would make you look terrible, Brenda pointed out. I know, Josh acknowledged, and I deserve that. But this isn't about me. It's about protecting Kevin's privacy and dignity as much as possible. Susie, who had been listening quietly, suddenly spoke up. Why not just tell people you made a mistake? That's what you told me. You said, sometimes grown-ups make big mistakes, but what matters is trying to fix them. The simplicity of her suggestions silenced the adults. Out of the mouths of babes, Josh thought. That's not a bad approach, Kay said thoughtfully. Kevin had been quiet, processing. Now, he looked directly at Josh. If we do this, control the narrative like you said, I want two things. Name them, Josh replied immediately. First, no sob story. I don't want to be painted as some poor abandoned kid who's now been rescued by his wealthy white father. I had a great life with my mom. I don't need anyone's pity. Agreed, Josh said, admiring the young man's pride. Second, Kevin continued, I want it clear that this relationship is still evolving. I'm not suddenly calling you dad or pretending the past didn't happen. Josh nodded. That's more than fair. Anything else? Kevin thought for a moment. Yeah, I want to be there. When you talk to the reporter, I want to speak for myself. This surprised Josh. Are you sure? These interviews can be intrusive, uncomfortable. I'm sure, Kevin said firmly. I'm tired of being talked about instead of talked. 2. First by your father, now by the press. If this is happening, I want my voice heard. Brenda placed a hand on her son's shoulder. It's your decision. I'll support whatever you want to do. Later that night, after Brenda and Kevin had gone home, Josh drafted a statement with Kay's help. It acknowledged his past failure without offering excuses, emphasized his respect for Brenda's remarkable parenting, and expressed hope for developing a relationship with Kevin at whatever pace the young man was comfortable with. Most importantly, it requested privacy during this personal family matter. The interview was scheduled for the following afternoon at a neutral location, a private room at the community center where Kevin had played basketball growing up. As Josh and Kay arrived, he spotted Kevin and Brenda already waiting, speaking with a woman who must be the reporter. You ready for this? Kay asked, squeezing his hand. No, Josh admitted. but it's necessary. The reporter, Yvette Lee, was surprisingly respectful. She began by establishing the basic facts. Yes, Josh was Kevin's biological father. Yes, he had been absent from his life until recently. Yes, they were now cautiously building a relationship. Kevin, Yvette turned to the young man. How do you feel about reconnecting with your father after all these years? Kevin sat straight, his injured arm a reminder of the tumultuous few days since Josh had entered his life. Confused, he answered honestly. Angry sometimes, curious. Too, it's complicated. And what about your basketball career? Duke has been very excited about having you join their program. Has this family situation affected your plans? No, Kevin said firmly. Basketball has always been my constant. My mom made sure I had opportunities to develop my talent. That hasn't changed. Yvette turned back to Josh. You've been a prominent figure in Boston's business community for years. Why come forward now? Why acknowledge Kevin after 17 years of absence? The question Josh had been dreading. Because I saw his face, he said simply, in a magazine at the grocery store. And I couldn't hide from the truth anymore. The truth that I had failed him and his mother in the worst possible way. So, this was prompted by Kevin's growing public profile. Josh understood the implication. It's not about his success, he clarified. It's about my failure. I'm not proud of the man I was 17 years ago. I let fear and prejudice dictate my actions. I can't change that past, but I can acknowledge it honestly and try to be better moving forward. Yvette seemed surprised by his candor. That's quite an admission. It's the truth, Josh replied. My daughter Susie recently reminded me that what matters isn't the mistake, but what you do to fix it. I'm trying to follow her wisdom. The interview continued for another 30 minutes. Throughout, Josh noticed Kevin watching him carefully, gauging his sincerity perhaps. When the topic turned to Steiny's interference, Josh was careful to take full responsibility for his own actions while making it clear his father's views were not his own. Final question, Yvette said. Where do you see this relationship going? What are your hopes for the future? Josh looked at Kevin. That's not really up to me. I'd like to be part of Kevin's life in whatever way he's comfortable with, even if that's just as a spectator at his games. The ball is in his court, so to speak. A ghost of a smile touched Kevin's face at the basketball metaphor. When the interview ended, Yvette thanked them for their candor and promised to send an advance copy of the article before publication. Outside the community center, as they prepared to go their separate ways, Kevin approached Josh. That was harder than I expected, he admitted. You did great, Josh assured him. You spoke your truth. Kevin hesitated, then asked, Did you mean what you said about letting me set the pace? Absolutely, Josh confirmed. No pressure, no expectations. Kevin nodded. I'm visiting Duke next weekend. Tour the campus, meet the coaches in person. My mom's coming with me. He paused, seeming to weigh his next words carefully. Susie mentioned she's never been to North Carolina. If you guys wanted to come, maybe make it a road trip. The tentative invitation hung in the air. Josh felt a surge of emotion that he carefully kept from overwhelming his expression. We'd like that, he said simply. If you're sure. I'm not sure about much right now, Kevin admitted, but I think it's worth trying. As they parted ways, Josh realized that was all anyone could ask for, a chance to try, to build something new from the ruins of past mistakes. 6 months later, Josh sat in the stands of Duke's basketball arena. Susie perched excitedly beside him, Kay and Brenda chatting companionably on his other side. Below, Kevin warmed up with his new teammates, his formerly broken arm now fully healed, his movements confident and powerful. The Boston Herald article had come and gone. There had been a week of intense scrutiny, some judgment, some sympathy. Steiny had stopped speaking to Josh entirely after the public acknowledgement of his mixed-race grandson, but the expected financial repercussions hadn't materialized. Instead, Steiny had withdrawn into bitter silence, his final control mechanism, rendered powerless by Josh's willingness to accept the consequences of his choices. Kevin still called him Josh, not Dad. That might never change. And Josh was at peace with that possibility. What mattered was that they were here, together, building something real, not perfect, not seamless, but honest. As the game began, Kevin glanced up at the stands, finding his unusual family group. He gave a quick nod of acknowledgement before turning his focus to the game. "He's going to be amazing," Susie declared confidently. "He already is," Josh replied, watching his son take his position on the court. "He already is." The sound of the buzzer echoed through the arena, signaling the start of something new. If you've made it this far, thank you. This story wasn't just about mistakes. It was about what we choose to do after we make them. He'll never erase what he did, but he showed up. And maybe that's where healing begins. If it moved you, consider subscribing, and I'll be here waiting for you in the next. Thanks for sticking with the story until the end. If you enjoyed it, give this a like and share if you haven't already, and subscribe for more.